All right, guys, this is an exploration. This is fantastic. So good to see you again. Today, we're talking about sales and sales programs, and especially where sales programs fail. And I wanted to have this discussion because we do get a lot of sales clients, big companies that hire us to do training for their sales department. So we've seen some gaps in their trainings that if we do this video and talk about it, hopefully sales managers, sales enablement managers, even sales professionals will learn something and apply it so they can do a better job at selling and making more money. Maybe let's begin with the biggest problem you guys see when it comes to sales programs or implementing sales programs. And it's whoever want to start is fine.
Sure, I can kick it off.
Go for it.
When I see sales training programs, a lot of the times they start off very high level because they have to. They have to go high level to appeal to different clients. And there are some more niche sales trainings programs out there. One example would be specifically recruiting sales. And then you have more of the broad level that appeal to any sales organization.
And that's a good thing, right, Rahul? Like starting with the high level, because different people, I guess they come to a sales organization, they don't have a mental model for processing the sales conversation and the sales process. And a system like the Challenger would come in there and install like this big software, and it helps them orient in that environment, right?
That's right. Yeah. So, you're 22 coming out of school, and you join Salesforce, right? And you're part of their sales team. If you don't have a high level system, you're going to be pretty overwhelmed, and you're going to be shooting from the hip, and each call you're going to be doing slightly differently, going off your gut. And one of the problems that a lot of sales managers or sales enablement teams see is that honestly, they're hiring salespeople and they are confident. But confident doesn't always correlate to competence. And that doesn't mean that they're doing, that they're not able to get to that level of competence, but we all know it. We know how sales teams operate. A lot of companies, 3-month turnover. They spend $100,000 training a salesperson for 3 months, and then they don't produce results, and they're out the door. Not good for anybody, not good for the reps, not good for the managers, not good for the company. So it does help to give that high level framework first. Oh, okay, you're supposed to educate the customer. You need to reassure them. You need to manage the relationship. You need to be creating some sense of urgency. Why now? Why should they care? So those high level questions are important, and it gives them the what of what they're supposed to do. But I think why we're talking about this now is that's great and it's necessary, but you tell me, okay, you need to manage the relationship, and you can say, can you tell me a little bit more about your industry? Okay, sure, I can ask that question. You tell me more about the industry, and then they tell, okay, now give them some reassurance that you've done this before with the customer. How am I supposed to say it exactly? What if I just start rambling for 10 minutes?
Chaz is really good at this.
What if I start rambling for 10 minutes about the customer because I have no idea what it means to reassure, what it means to say a customer success story.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the gap is in the fundamentals of their communication style. Because, okay, it's nice to know the what, but how do you say it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when we work with clients who use the Challenger system, and I know we have clients that use different systems, but most recently we've been dealing with big clients who use the Challenger. Usually they have 3 tenets for the system. You have to teach, you have to tailor, and you have to take control of the conversation. Notice, like Rahul, you were saying, like teach, and be like, oh, great, Chaz, I'm going to teach you something. And then what the heck do I say? Then tailor. And how the heck do I tailor the conversation? Take control of the conversation. This is a big, big topic. Like how the heck do you take control of the conversation without sounding like a jerk or abusive or aggressive and still sound like a professional? Is this what we're talking about here? Is this where the problem or the gap that needs to be filled in sales programs?
Absolutely. It's a deadly combination too. If you have what I was talking about, the confidence, and you get the what, and then you don't get the how to say it. So they go teach it. And I'm really confident. And then I'm teaching and I'm just going all over the place because I'm like, oh, I'm super confident about what I'm talking about. And I'm not concise. I'm not surgical. I'm not precise about what I'm saying. And that's really off-putting for somebody on the other line. The other side is that they freeze. They maybe are more analytical. They're not super confident, but they've been hired because they have aptitude for being able to speak to customers and things like that. But they still don't know, and so they go, okay, I don't know what to teach, so maybe they're too curt or they don't teach the right thing. So that next level is needed so they don't get stuck.
Yeah. So that's from the perspective of the agent, right? And
right.
They get frustrated. They don't know how to say it. How about, Chaz, maybe what's the perspective of the managers, the sales managers, when they get this, they get the organization to buy this whole big system, they pay $1 million and it's ongoing, and they see their agents being frustrated. Like, what's their perspective on this?
Yeah, their perspective is that they want to help pave the path for their agents. So when a manager does have a large system to implement, especially in sales, one of the things is going to be with role playing or with ensuring the sales professional has a very specific goal of what to do from a day-to-day perspective, and that they can really feel comfortable framing the conversation or giving insight or giving that reassurance, and that they've practiced and done that before. So management, just the direct sales manager there, now it's really, they're the first level of most hands-on implementation of this system, right? But when they get this system, whether they were the ones that fought for this system, or if they were the ones that had this system come to them and then they were expected to implement it, right? It could be different situations. So either situation, the important part and one thing they're going to be focusing on is helping that individual, just the one sales rep, succeed and to help break through any emotional barriers that may be there, whether it's fear of rejection or, like Rahul said, if they're just not specific enough, they're calling a bunch of customers, but they're just saying the wrong things, but they think they're saying the right things, right? It's, there could be different things, but whatever it is, having that system from a high level and just being trained, for the manager being trained on also how to implement it with the individual as well, because that's what they really care about, right? Is clearing the path for them.
Clearing the path. So what's the biggest obstacle? Maybe Rahul, you can speak to this. What is that gap? Like, what if we have to put language around this gap, like that they need to fill on the how? Like, what would we say?
Yeah, that's great. So it's what we call communications fundamentals. So we hammer about this all the time. You're talking about all the time as well with clients, that that next level of communication. How do you say, the example that I use, how do you say a customer success story? Well, there's a storytelling framework around how do you tell a good customer success story. And we teach one, there's plenty of other frameworks as well, but they need some kind of framework. Otherwise, you risk what we're talking about. They're going to go all over the place. How do you talk about yourself and relate to the customer? There's a personal story framework. How do you tell an inspirational story to the customer?
I see. So let's say a sales agent might know the concept of a story, and the system tells them share a story with the customer, but maybe they don't know how to frame the story. So they end up, let's say they're calling a small business, an accounting firm, and they want to share a story, and they end up sharing a story about them buying a new dog. And it could work if the CPA who's on the other line is a dog lover, but what if that person is not a dog lover? This is not related to the conversation. So we teach them about, like, maybe what kind of story to use and then how to structure it so it doesn't take the whole hour. Is that right?
That's right. And practice. And so that's just one area, but their storytelling, that's one component. There's another component, which is their overall messaging. So are they being able to pull in, data and research? that's appropriate? Are they able to connect that over to a conclusion that they're drawing, an opinion that they have that the customer should be moving to? Right? And then another one is their tone, their body language, if they're in front of the video camera, or if they're in front of if it's in a meeting. Are they coming in and starting the meeting and they're looking down, right? Or they're starting
not
the meeting
making eye contact.
Not making eye contact, or they're not smiling. They're like really serious.
They're not relaxed.
They're not relaxed. They look really tense. Another one that we see all the time, and I've worked with very many sales reps and just managers speaking way too fast, way too fast coming in, and it's just a hard sell. And they can tell, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to stop themselves if they have the awareness, and sometimes they don't have the awareness and they don't have that delivery communication. And so they need training on that fundamental as well.
I see. So, however, like most people assume that a salesperson is this, outgoing personality and they can talk to anybody, talk anywhere. And maybe that's why I think maybe they ignore teaching them some of the fundamentals.
That's right. That's right. Yeah? It's a huge miss. It's a huge miss, and I think it's a disservice to salespeople, because they want to get better, and the ones who are really hungry, they may think, oh, I have this down, but then they're getting frustrated because the results aren't happening. The managers are getting frustrated.
Yeah.
The VPs are going, what's going on? We just spent a bunch of money on the system. Why are they not?
I see. So basically, it's the difference between going from a broad flashlight which is their natural ability is to go flashlight, flood everything like a floodlight, and turning that floodlight into laser beam. So
becoming surgical.
Focus, surgical. Yeah.
And
So for example, Chaz, let's say in a challenger system, they say you have to share an insight with a customer. And most people, when they go insight, first they panic, like what the heck is an insight? And then they try to dig something up from marketing material and they go share it with customers. And usually it's unclear, it's unprofessional, it's unrelated. What's a way, like at Magnetic Speaking, when companies, sales organization approach Magnetic Speaking, what's a way that we teach them, a framework to help them get focused and centered in that specific area where they have to share insights?
Yeah, definitely, Peter. So the main frame I would say that's most relevant to this would be a seed, right? It's what we kind of our core of really what we would teach the sales rep for sharing those insights. And it's a very simple frame where the insight would be sharing the insight, giving evidence or data behind why that insight is good, and then sharing some example or other customer success story. And that's one example of a simple framework for sharing an insight that you can use that will just keep you focused. Because there's an example of, in my past, different sales reps that I worked before. So he was really great, really confident, and anyone could talk with him. And, after a while, we would see him work with different sales individuals, sales clients, and really just anyone that he would work with. And what ended up coming up time and time again for him was he would talk a lot, but not say really what needed to be said. And which is common with a lot of salespeople, right? That's why they are salespeople, because they can really build good rapport.
And they open the floodgates, right?
Yeah, and build good atmosphere with it, right? But where he was really falling short was have the fundamentals of that framework, right? Whether it's the insight framework or any other framework for framing conversation and taking control of it. And I had actually seen some of the feedback firsthand from some of the clients that there was one case that they didn't want to work with him because they couldn't get a word in and they didn't understand what they were going through. So it was really, it really did rub some clients the wrong way.
100%. I've seen this, like, for example, Chaz, I've seen this with clients who they share something with a client of theirs, and then they get this quizzical look, like, and they know, oh, maybe they didn't understand me, or maybe I didn't say enough, and they say another thing, and then they get another look, and they throw another thing, and they get another look, and they keep like spouting stuff over and over. And the session, like an hour later, they haven't said anything useful for the client, and that's what we're trying to avoid here.
Exactly, and that can be they can be trained out of that to know what to do in that situation. They can ask an enrolling question. They can do a follow-up question. They can pause for a second and hold the silence. Right. So people, we can all get the same recipe for the same meal, but how come when we cook it, Chaz will have the best tasting recipe, the best tasting
He's the
meal.
best at fish.
Right. So maybe we all get a recipe.
And not baking.
so say we all get a recipe for a fish, right? And then you end up with the best one, but we go, but we did all the same things, but you're doing something with how you cut some of the vegetables, how you sauteed the onions, something you're doing
order
in
of
the details,
things. Yeah.
The order of things, something you're doing a little bit different. And you go, oh, it took me an hour and a half. And you go, oh, it only took me 30 minutes. How did that happen? So there's something different there, and that's what we're talking about, is the how.
Great analogy.
And
So you get the ingredients, and then what they lack is how do you put these ingredients together?
Mm-hmm. I would say to add one more point on what Rahul said is consistently. So all of that
consistently.
Consistently, not just one time. That's actually a really good point, because sometimes, let's say you're a sales manager, right? So you go, oh, my team's doing great this month, and you go, I think it's this that we did this. We talked about this insight last week, or we did this little role play last week, but you have we call it shaking the tree. They have no idea why the fruit's falling down. All right. So, and the next month, the same person who's performing well is really not performing well.
Yeah.
You know where to go with there, so you have no idea how to train them on the communication.
There's nothing wrong with shaking the tree here, right? Sometimes you do have to shake the tree. Yeah. However, what you're saying is, if you know the structure of an insight and people are structuring it based on that specific structure, then you can diagnose where the problem is. If there's a problem with what they're saying, you can help them improve, and it'll be on something tangible versus like, just say a better story.
Yeah.
Communicate better.
Communicate better. Yeah. A lot of our clients come with that feedback, and that's okay. Their manager isn't a public speaking trainer. Yeah. And we understand.
Yeah,
you need more leadership communication, and they're just coming to us with, I have no idea what that means. I don't think my manager knows what that means, and that's okay. But there is a detailed framework to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one time I was at an event, and Rahul, you just did a training for this organization that was attending the event, and they were a consulting firm, and they do lobbying for the biotech industry. And I had the name tag, magnetic speaking, and this guy comes and shakes my hand. Great, I just had the training with Rahul. The seed idea is like mind blowing, and this is a veteran salesperson. And I think that's the value that people get, is like finally they can make sense of what they've been doing if they're veterans, and now they can teach it to others. So all right, guys. So like, where do we go from here? If you're a sales manager or a head of learning and development for a sales organization, what do you do to infuse this knowledge in your organization? What are the approaches?
Do you want me to?
Sure. Any one of.
Yeah, go ahead, Rahul. Yeah.
Okay, so one option, of course, which we do, is we come into the organization and we train the reps, and we teach them delivery. How do you pause? All the stuff around confidence and communication, the subtle nonverbal things that they're doing, that is either serving them or not serving them. And we work on that, or we can spend a whole day on messaging, storytelling, facilitation. How do you facilitate a meeting and a conversation so it's productive, so at the end they want to take an action? So those are all skills that we can come in, and an outside vendor, this is what usually companies do, an outside vendor comes in. That's one option. However, it's not really scalable. And what we've noticed it
could be scalable, right? It could be, but it could be very expensive if they're gonna have an outside vendor come in, especially if they have, like, let's say 1,000 agents. Then it'd be like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's say we take one of our default just out of the box trainings, like for messaging, about 12, 13, 14 people in there, and there's 1,000 person sales force. Are they going to have the budget for that? Probably not. Are they going to have not even, maybe they do have the budget, but are they going to have the consistency? Because we're clear with our clients, and we say, hey, we'll be honest here. Like, your reps are from this level all the way to this level. These folks need a lot of help. We're going to need to come in and keep coaching them. And that's not always feasible for organizations. So the place that's really scalable is that we train the enablement team, or we train some of the managers to be able to train fundamentals of communication, so that when they go, hey, Peter, you've got to tell a better customer success story. The first thing you want to focus on is the pain. The second thing you want to focus on is this. And now again, let me show you an example, and they can give you an example of specifically that and break that down. Can you imagine how much better that would be for the rep?
Yeah. It's the common language. Maybe Chaz, can you talk about having common language that they can speak on and give each other feedback on?
Yeah, common language is really good because you can also do role plays, right? That's one really big part of it is preparing these role plays, and you're on the same page. And that's what's going to be really good for the whole team. That's what's going to be good for the manager. And one area as well. So when, let's say, for example, a rep is struggling and he or she is maybe 2 years in. They're a good rep and they have good effort, but for some reason they just had a down couple of weeks. So the manager would set them aside and say, hey, I care about you. This is, whether they verbally say this or not, the energy would be, I care about you as a rep. I want to do what I can to help you get to the next level and get past this. So one of the things that managers will typically do is say, what's going on? And that is really difficult as a rep to work with, because the rep doesn't know. And this is where
if I knew, I would have solved it, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the rep isn't not doing it just because they're not doing it, right? And if that is the case, well, then that's a different subject. But if they do really want to do well, but they're not, that means there's a blind spot. That means they don't know what's going on. And if they're asked what's going on, it's only going to make them feel a lot worse. So this is where common language and frameworks play so well here with the consistency, right? Because if you consistently know what works and what doesn't work, and you have the frameworks, for example, the seed works, and you say, hey, let's look at the insights. Are you using the seed formula for insights? I haven't been using that at all lately, but now that I think about it, I was using that and it worked really well. So then you roll a little bit around that seed and that framework.
Awesome.
You have those things that you can target.
Yeah, perfect. So maybe you can, like Rahul talked about, there's two ways to integrate this into a sales department. Integrate the fundamental trainings of communication, presentation, storytelling. And one way was to invite an external vendor to train all the salespeople. Now, for small sales organization, that might work. For a bigger one, it's not scalable maybe enough. So the second approach is bringing in somebody to train the trainers at the sales enablement department, training the coaches, and have them roll it out to their organization. Can you talk about that process? Because the first route is easy. It's like invite the vendor, we do the training, and bye-bye, and come back every quarter. The second one seems like to be more involved. Can you talk a little bit about that process, since you're involved with so many deals around that issue?
So with that one, really having the enablement or L&D individual to be able to train on an outside training is going to make it much more scalable, right? And with that scalability comes a cohesive team training, right? So to explain a little bit more about that, when there's an outside vendor brought in, don't get me wrong, that's what we do. So I'm not saying it's bad.
Don't say anything about that.
No, it's great. It's great. But really where the scalability comes in with that is that you have the trainers that are taught on this outside framework on the fundamentals, and then they can really teach that to the team, and they also know the relationships of each individual, and they know those people, and those people know them, so there's going to be more of that atmosphere with it. So you can have that with 1,000 reps, and it makes it a lot more scalable in terms of this one person in the organization being known for that. So that's also another route that you can go.
Yeah, awesome. One of the best moments in my career is when I saw a bunch of sales professionals give feedback to each other about a story, a customer success story. And this rep came up and she said a customer success story. And all of a sudden, I asked, does anybody have feedback? And the rest of the reps were like dissecting that story. And they were saying, like, in the beginning, when you shared about the pain, maybe say something like this to make the pain even bigger. And then on gain, it sounded like too hyped up. Maybe if you downplay it a little bit, it's going to sound more realistic. In the process section of the story, maybe you can add this piece that would be relevant. And I find that when I share that piece of information, clients perk up. And I think that's what we're going after. If they learn a common language, a common system for the fundamentals, so they can share insights with each other, critique each other in a constructive way, versus just saying your story sucks or you need to work on a better story.
Exactly.
Awesome. So what do you guys see? Any one of you can answer this, and we'll end at this. Like, what do you see is the obstacle for sales managers? Because almost every sales manager we talk to, they experience this gap of lack of fundamentals in their team, especially if they're hiring large amounts of sales reps, especially newer reps. They find that there's a gap. However, they might face resistance or friction in the organization. Like, what is the problem? Why are they not applying this all the time, or why wouldn't they move forward with this, and how should they be thinking about it?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So
okay,
yeah, it's a good question, because you get the sales system, your manager and enablement, you get the system, you paid $1 million, and you expect that it's gonna solve all the issues for you, right? Or you go, okay, it's gonna be able to give them a framework, and then you end up with overwhelm, frustration, turnover. So something is missing. And the area that needs to be improved is being able to sell it to leadership that this is one aspect of the pie. The other aspect is now they need the fundamentals of how to actually implement the things in the system. So you need to attach accelerators onto it. You need to attach something that's going to give the reps some more specifics and be more surgical and be more detailed when they speak.
Yeah.
So it is selling it at a leadership level, that this is good, this is a good place to start. And you can even give them the examples that we say. Be like, okay, they're getting feedback like, oh, can you reassure the customer with the story? Now you can even ask leadership, could you do that on the spot?
By the way, the reassure part is a different system than Challenger, but it's also another valid system.
It's another valid system. I've seen in some other sales trainings, they say reassure, and we use it ourselves. And if we just said reassure, like when we're training our, Chaz and other salespeople, we don't just say, okay, reassure them. We show them how to reassure. Because your idea of reassuring is very different from my idea of reassuring. My idea of reassuring could be like, just, talking about all over the place and not knowing. So that's one thing to talk about is how do you make it more detailed for.
I would add to that, like they should use the same thinking philosophy around selling internally as they do externally. Like when you're selling to a client, you set the expectations. You go, okay, we're going to buy into this new sales program. By itself is going to be good. It's going to upgrade our sales force. However, some agents, they're going to pick it up and run with it. Like I would say 3%, because they do have fundamental experience and fundamental knowledge. So they run with it. 3%, they're not going to even comprehend it. And these are the people who are going to go out. And the core, the rest, 94%, the rest, these are good, high quality reps that now they understand the system, but they lack the fundamentals to move fast. And if we don't help them move fast, they're going to get frustrated because they're not making money. They're not comprehending. They're overwhelmed because they're getting vague feedback on the language. And you don't want that. If you want them to go fast, then you need to give them an accelerator. And I think that's how managers should sell it to leadership, right? Like frame it that way. Not to say that the system we bought sucks. Just say the system we got is good. If you want us to go at this speed, it's going to help us. If you want to go faster, we need this supplement, this complement.
Yeah. And reduce turnover.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because that 94%. Okay, you're saying like, okay, they have aptitude and they're there, but how long are they going to be there?
Yeah,
you know, like maybe not all of them have the patience to be fumbling around for a year.
Yeah. Especially goal-oriented sales reps, right? If they're not getting results and they don't know why, they might start doubting themselves. And if the manager comes and tells them, work on better stories, and be like, I've been telling stories all day long, man. What else do you want?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Great.
If you can sell that to leadership, that's going to be more specific.
Yeah. And that's what we found, like from our experience, probably Chaz, you can add to that sales managers, they come to us and they work in partnership with us and they ask us like, how do we position it to leadership? Because this is important. Mm-hmm. And once leadership sees that this is an accelerator, they know it's a unique advantage that they can add to their system. Because let's face it, if you're getting a sales system, probably 10 of your competitors have the same system. Mm-hmm. So how can you differentiate? You can differentiate with speed of implementation, and that's by adding the accelerator and the fundamental to it.
Exactly. And like something Rahul said in the beginning of this, really loved is, you know, the for example, the Salesforce part, right? If you have this junior sales rep or someone that does need a general framework, you need that big training. You need that big overview training as a guidance system, or else they will be overwhelmed. So that huge system is great. It is definitely needed in those sales organizations. And, you know, there are companies out there that have these sales, and most companies have a sales system. So how do you stand out above the rest? By teaching these fundamentals, by bringing in accelerator programs, whether it's pure outside, training your own teams, whatever it is, doesn't matter, but just to stand out above the rest, because most already have that system.
We're going to wrap up here. I guess the next step for people is to reach out to Magnetic Speaking and maybe walk through an assessment. If you're a sales manager or a person in the learning and development for sales and sales enablement, you would reach out to Magnetic Speaking and they would guide you through an assessment to assess your team's fundamental communication, presentation, facilitation, and storytelling skills. And then they'll be able to give you a recommendation on the best way of going forward. Thank you guys. See you later.
See you later. Thank you.